morning, everybody. Whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world, this is Coast to Coast. Got Pags in the house. What's happening, man?
Just another day in paradise.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, we talked about it throughout the week. We have a great guest today, writer of multiple books, including Bench Bosses, Lords of the Gridiron, and we are going to be talking about his newest book, Patriarchs of the Dougout. Please help me welcome Matthew Dibiase. What's happening?
Pretty good. Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Pags. It's great to be on the show here. Thank you.
Of course. You know, I guess one of the first things we got to say is you're right there in Philly with Pags.
Yes. We're both dying from the heat, man. We're staying indoors, man.
It was brutal. I mean, I went out last night to go find the big boy 4014, and thank God I wasn't in Reading, because it seemed like everybody was passing out from heat exposure out there. Yeah. It's warm. It's a little toasty out.
Oh yeah, that's a gross understatement if there ever was one. Can you imagine having to play sports in this? I mean, the World Cup or the Phillies. I mean, they're on Kansas City tomorrow. You know, that's going to be hotter in Hades. You know, KC in July.
Yeah. I mean, they had to run the bases yesterday after the Phillies game. I'm not sure if they had it or not with the kids. I know I was kind of watching, you know, from afar, and it didn't look like there was anybody there at that game.
Yeah, it ain't worth the risk, man. It ain't worth it, man. You not in this day and age. Can't take a chance, man.
That is correct.
Yeah. Now, in that scenario, I'd be looking at it as, you know, I might have bought tickets, but there's AC in my house.
That's right. Yep.
In the pool. See, I like that. Watching our show from the pool is not a bad way to go.
Yeah, but you have to be in the pool. You can't be outside the pool. You can't go like in and out. You got to be
right.
in.
Oh yeah, no, that's the laptop next to the pool, and you're just like in there waiting in it.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean, tell us about your book. It came out earlier this year, and you know, what was the inspiration heading into baseball from, you know, obviously the other books that you've written?
Okay, my book is called Patriarchs of the Dougout, Baseball's Greatest Managers. It's been out since March 29th this year. It's available at Amazon and only at Amazon. It's not available in stores. You can buy it in paperback or in Kindle off of Amazon. Just type in my name as you see it on the screen there, or just type in the title Patriarchs of the Dugout and you get it. Like I said, it's my fifth book. I always wanted to write a baseball book. I said so in the beginning. You know, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to write a baseball book. And I knew, I wanted to evaluate the greatest managers in baseball history. Also, my book is groundbreaking in a certain way because it is the first book that ranks and evaluates managers that also includes Negro League managers, in addition to all other established Major League Baseball managers. The reason why I did that was that 2 years ago, when Baseball Commissioner Manfred ordained that all Negro League stats from 1920 to 1948 be incorporated into the official canon of Major League Baseball stats, I was honor bound historically to start including Negro League managers like Rube Foster, Vic Harris, who managed the Homestead Grays through their glory years, as well as four other managers that were eligible into my book. And what my book does is those Major League Baseball managers from 1871 to 2025 who have managed a minimum of 5 seasons in all established major leagues were rated and evaluated. And the end result is my book, Patriarchs of the Dugout. I use 3 standards of evaluation: career value, which measures the quantity of a manager's success; BQ value, which measures a manager's best 5 consecutive seasons. Like imagine Casey Stengel's 5 consecutive World Series wins from 49 to 53. Basically, it measures a manager's ability to be dynastic, like Joe Torre from 96 to 2001, and so on and so forth. And then you've got the B5 value, which basically measures a manager's best 5 individual seasons, and they don't have to be consecutive through the eyes of my rating system. And what I did was I created a rating system. Basically, it's like a plus minus system where based on a team's winning percentage in a season, the higher your winning percentage, the more points you earn. You also earn points if you finish first in your division, or if you earn a wild card, if you win the pennant, and of course the ultimate is winning the World Series and all that. And that's what I did. I just used that system. I ran all those eligible managers. I mean, out of a massive pool, I think what was like 900 or 1,000. I had 274 eligible managers, and I just ran them through that system. And to know the results, just buy my book, Patriarchs of the Dugout.
So when they included all the Negro Leagues, how did that change your research as far as ranking?
Well, it's very difficult because unfortunately, the Negro Leagues did not have like what regular baseball had. An Elias Bureau has precise measurement of stats there. It was basically, I had to use what was available. There's this website called Seamheads, which is an invaluable resource for all Negro League research there. It really helped me out enormously. They also, the Negro Leagues from 1920, 1948 used like a split season system. And so I was weird. I had to do like, who won the first half of the season, then won the second half of the season. I had to do a lot of checking and rechecking and all that. The postseason was a bit weird. It was the hardest aspect of doing the research for Patriarchs of the Dugout, but I was able to master it. And again, there are 6 Negro League managers featured in that book alongside all other established Major League managers there.
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you. I sicked ChatGPT on your book. I went crazy on it. Because there were 3 specific names that I did not see on your list. Ooh. And I went with those 3 specifically to see if I could manipulate getting them on the list. Because when you go through everything and you start to try to figure this all out, it was like, all right, I'm gonna, I don't like the fact that you have certain names on there and not my 3. So
who are your 3?
Mike Scioscia, who was just off of your list. He fell in I think the 51st spot.
I think number 50, too. I thought 51, 52. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jim Leland, who also just fell off of the list. And I thought both of them are better than Joe Madden. And then Lou Piniella. And Lou Piniella was a little bit further down on the list, I think. It went all
71st.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I tried to figure out, because I felt like some of this, when you start to attack the book like that, I started to think about different things on how that could change. You giving them, making one of the values of 5 years in consecutive, rather than doing it in 3 or going as far as 7, really, the Yankees all of a sudden get a lot better. Sure. Anybody who managed the Yankees, like Billy Martin, I didn't think was a good manager at all. In fact, the fact that he got fired all the time was more a testament to that. That being said, he was a Yankees manager. And he was a manager during the time where the Yankees were the evil empire, and George Steinbrenner bought all the players that were needed to do that. So I thought that unfairly weighted towards them. I could not stand La Russa. I hated La Russa. I thought that I was never a fan of any manager who felt like he invented the game. And La Russa was one of those guys.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you want an explanation, okay, what Scioscia, after he won that World Series in 2002, he did have some lean years later on with the Angels, and that kind of served as drag. Now the thing is, if I had not incorporated Negro League managers into the mix of my book, then Scioscia would have cracked my top 50 and all of that. Absolutely. Because I featured 6 Negro League managers. Take away those 6, Scioscia's in the top 50. Absolutely, positively. But Scioscia did have some lean years after that World Series win. And that served as drag because it's a plus minus system. Yes, I award points like, if you have a winning season, you get, if your winning percentage is like above 550, you get X amount of points. But also when you have losing years, I take away points. It's plus points and minus points. It's kind of like hockey, a plus minus system. So if you have a losing season, you're going to lose like X amount of points. If you finish in last place, you're going to lose 5 points off your value there. And Scioscia did have some losing seasons, and it served as drag. Now let's talk about Jim Leyland. Yeah, Jim Leyland won the 1997 World Series, but here's the thing that hurt him. He also lost 2 World Series too. He lost in 05, and I forget, was it in the 2010s? Was it 11 or 13? He lost when he was with the Tigers and all that. If he had won those World Series, that would have altered the equation. That probably would have helped him. He would have moved up if he wasn't meant top 50 then, he would have been so close and all that. And also Leyland did have, also the fact that Leyland, those 3 straight years when he was with the Pirates, he won divisional titles, but he couldn't win the pennant thanks to Barry Bonds, choking in the postseason. Guess what? If he had won those pennants, I bet you anything, he would have cracked that top 50. Absolutely, positively. Those were lost opportunities. And also he did have some bad losing seasons, and that served as drag there. So that's why he's not in the top 50. Now, in regards to Lou Piniella, again, yeah, he did manage the Reds to the 1990 World Series and all that. But that was his only thing. The fact when he had that record-setting season when he won 116 games with Seattle and all that, the fact he didn't win the pennant, that hurt enormously. If he had won a pennant in a World Series, that would have altered the equation. And again, Piniella had some lean years that kind of had dragged him down there. I mean, the guys who made the top 50, there was the absence of having, prolonged periods of lean years, prolonged losing seasons with a few odd exceptions, like Casey Stengel when he was managing the Mets, Connie Mack after 1933, or also 1915 to 1922 when they finished last place 8 straight seasons and all that. That was like kind of exceptions to the rule. But basically those top 50, they were always maintained. They were consistent. They always maintained. Even Billy Martin, yeah, he only had that 1 World Series title, but he was always getting winners. His teams were always performing above expectation with Texas, with the Oakland A's. Yeah, that's why.
I mean, how much of that can you really put at the feet of a manager, or how much of it falls on your GM? Because like for Piniella, especially, Seattle has a real habit of not going and getting players. And you can be the best manager in the world, but if you just lack some talent, or as soon as your talent finally becomes talent, they ship them off to go win a ring somewhere else. It's tough to grade a manager on something that the GM and ownership is handling.
Yeah, but someone has to get credit for being at the helm. It's like Casey Stengel. Before he managed the Yankees, he was managing the Brooklyn Dodgers and what then called the Boston Braves. Had some very lousy seasons. If you just evaluate his years just with the Dodgers and Braves, there's no way he's top 50. It's only when he went to the Yankees and cranked out 10 pennants in 12 seasons. That's why he's featured in my book there. If you apply that logic, then you can't give credit to Casey Stengel. Yet you have to credit him because he had the personnel and he utilized them to absolute perfection, revolutionizing baseball with his extensive platooning and all of that. So you have to give him some. You have to give him some sort of credit. Someone has to manage that team, whether they didn't build it or not. They still had to manage it and lead it. I mean, others led the Chicago Cubs, but they couldn't produce. And Joe Mann, when he took over the Cubs, he finally broke their curse, 108-year curse. And he led in a World Series victory and all that. So someone's got to take the credit somehow.
For sure. I just think of like Joe Torre, right? When he had a good GM versus when he didn't.
Yeah. But I mean, before he took over the Yankees, he would not have been featured in my book. And I talk about that in my opening chapter. In other words, this is a tale of 2 Joe Torres. The first one, before he managed the Yankees, not even close to being top 50, according to my calculations. It's only when he went to the Yankees that made the biggest difference in the world. You know, he was in the right place in the right situation, and he took maximum advantage of it. And you have to give him credit. Yeah, he had George Steinberger and Cashman giving him all those beautiful free agents and all that. But you got to manage those free agents. You got to manage those egos, keep everything in balance, maintain your core. You know, and push the right buttons. And he did. God bless Joe Torre. He was able to push those buttons.
No, absolutely. But I mean, that was the best example of it, right? Because I mean, he was doing nothing prior, and then gets to the Yankees, and you know, it's like going from a Pinto to a Ferrari. You don't necessarily have to be a race car driver to be faster in a Ferrari.
but Torre could have made mistakes. He could have gone into a bad ego trip match with someone. I mean, he was actually more successful than Martin because Martin was always in conflict with Reggie, with other players there. I mean, there were always these little conflicts there. Torre was able to avoid those conflicts. He was always able to elude George Steinbrenner's axe for the longest time than any other manager. I mean, he was very silky smooth about it. He mastered the human equation far better than Billy Martin did. He was able to balance it out and not allow his own ego to get in the way, and also his own anger and his own emotions. That was Billy Martin's undoing. He never could control his own emotions. Basically, as I write in the very first sentence of my chapter on Billy Martin, he was a careening car wreck of a man and a manager. Literally, he was. And he died in a careening car wreck, too.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I think about this, and I agree a little bit to what Bo is saying in terms of, listen, Jim Leland was the manager of the Pirates when Pirates ownership had no idea what they were doing in terms, and he took like a bunch of ragtags, you know what I mean, and had winning seasons. And then he did the same thing with Detroit for a long time. You know, and I think of, you have Charlie Manuel on the list, and I'm happy to see that there. And I think he's one of the, strongest baseball minds still alive today. And then I think about, all right, if he wasn't the Phillies manager for any amount of time, he would absolutely not be on the list because he didn't get anywhere. It wasn't until 2008 when he won the World Series, and then 2009 when he lost the World Series. And then you have that 2010 where La Russa kind of came in, and ultimately whoever won that game 5, which was a 1-0 game between Doc and Carpenter, Doc gives up one bad pitch, a home run in the first inning, and that's the only run in that game. And St. Louis goes on to win the World Series rather than the Phillies. There's so much to be said for that. And, like I said, La Russa, I was never a big fan of him. Like I said, he was always let's put the pitcher in the 8th spot instead of the 9th spot. Come on. You didn't invent baseball. You know what I mean? And he always felt like he did. So I was never a big.
Thing about La Russa, though, people will be surprised where I have him. People always think, he's got to be top 10 or top 5 or something like that. But no. He had some bad years too. Also, he was never dynastic. He missed a chance at being dynastic when he won those 3 straight pennants, 88, 89, and 90, but lost 2 of those 3 World Series. That cost him. If he had won those series in 88 and 90, he would have gone up the charts, finished much higher. He probably would have cracked top 10. He also lost in 04 to the miracle Boston Red Sox and all that. And also, La Russa had some lousy seasons, like in the early 1990s with the A's. After that pennant in 1990, they went down the tubes. He had some bad years with St. Louis, like that year when McGuire, quote unquote, broke Maris's record, HDH and all. Hey, Cardinals, they were lousy. They had a losing season, man. I mean, they were sucky. I mean, he had some bad times, and that's why I don't have him ranked as high as people imagine he might. Same goes with Bobby Cox. He's not as ranked as high, for one simple reason: 4 World Series losses. Those 4 losses really cost him. If he had won those 4 World Series that he lost, he would have been top 10 material and all of that. I mean, the ones who were featured in my top 10, they won the big ones when they needed to be won, and they did it in volume and all that. Yeah.
No, and I saw that, and it was a matter of, like I said, trying to manipulate. Like, what made you decide to use 5 years rather than 3, or go even heavier with 7? Making 5 years kind of the cutoff, because I felt like that was slightly unfair, because that did weight more to the Dodgers as of late. And like you have Dave Roberts up there, and I understand that Dave Roberts has won a couple of World Series, but again, you have now the new evil empire of the Dodgers being able to buy these players and manipulate the system to be able to do that. And I don't think that the manager should get credit for that. And unfortunately, there's no other way to manage that in terms of a mathematical equation.
Okay, well, the reason why I used 5 consecutive years instead of 3 is I had tried 3 before with previous books. But what I discovered was there was a lot of what I call clumping. There was a lot of managers getting the exact same value. If I went to 5, then that allowed greater separation. I mean, you're really separating the truly exceptional from the very good from the above average from the average from the below average, and so on and so forth. It allowed for far more effective and far more greater separation. It's like Bill James in his historical baseball abstract. He used the player's best 3 consecutive seasons as a measuring tool. I basically adapted the BQ value, the best 5 consecutive seasons, from that Bill James standard. But I used it for 5. And another reason why I used for 5 is the average managerial tenure for the average manager is 5 seasons. Actually, you can apply that to the 4 major sports: football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. I mean, I did a statistical analysis, and it always rounds out to 5. And that's what I use. I figured, and I've heard that before. Some managers, they say you got to make if you're going to be a managing or coaching career, you got to make your dramatic statement in your first 5 years. And if you don't do it in your first 5 years, you're probably never going to do it at all. So that's why I use 5 as a measuring stick. Okay.
Okay. Since you mentioned Bill James, you reference him in your book. Talk about the grading differences between the two. You said you tried to adapt some of his stuff, but in reading kind of the way that you evaluate versus what he was evaluating, for the people that haven't read the book yet, kind of explain how that comes together, because it might make some of it make sense.
30 years ago, I think it's 30 years ago, Bill James wrote this book, his Guide to Baseball Managers. And that's actually what inspired all of my books. I was basically applying what he tried to do to various other sports there. So with my baseball book, the difference between my system and Bill James's system is that with his Baseball Managers book, he never, if a manager had a losing season, they were just given 0. My difference is, if you have a losing season, you lose points. So there were no penalties for having a losing season. It was just a big flat 0. I thought what I did, my system is symmetrical. It's balanced. In other words, you get points for finishing in first place. Also, you lose points for finishing in last place. So it counterbalances out. If your winning percentage is between 501 and 52 and 524, you get a point. But if it's between 499 and 475, you lose 1 point. Everything counterbalances out. It's symmetrical there, and that was one thing. Also, his system is it was just you award a point. Okay, you get 1 point if you have a winning season. You get 1 point for finishing in first place, but it's only 1 point. I mean, should winning the World Series be the same value as just having a basic winning season? Is that really fair? No, mine's a sliding scale from 1 to 12 there. In other words, the better your team performance in a season, the more points you get. If you get into the postseason, if you win your division or get a wild card, you're going to get extra points. If you win the pennant, you're going to get extra points. If you win the World Series, you're going to get even more extra points and all that. It's a sliding scale. Bill James didn't do that. He didn't do it. Maximum with his thing is a 6 because he only used 6 standards and all that. Mine is a more precise, more they're finer values, more gradations and all that. Far more better separation, as it were, than his.
All right, my next question, this is going to be a little bit difficult maybe to answer or even to ask. Short of adding in the Negro Leagues, what would you find it was the most difficult of this process to manage? Because obviously there's tremendous amount of managers, number of different leagues. You're going all the way back into the 1890s and
1871.
Yeah, the records aren't really the best well kept back then as well. And so there's lots of different challenges. And I mean, like I said, when I went after ChatGPT and I really started to try to break down your book, there were a lot of Negro managers that came into the mix. That there was I would say that it was mostly Negro managers in between 50 and 60 that felt like that they could have been in that top 50. And it's really hard to determine any of that. I mean, it's especially somebody who has spent some time in the Negro Baseball Museum and spoke to the curator there, firsthand, which is anybody who is a baseball fanatic in any way, shape, or form. Definitely make it to Kansas City and go through that museum and take the tour with the curator. He is a wealth of knowledge and also very exciting to talk to. It gave me a much larger appreciation for that side of baseball in total. Mm-hmm. That being said, what would you say was the hardest to manage in these equations and such?
My problem was calculating the value of the wild card, because the wild card was introduced in the 1990s. So, but how to do a value, because it couldn't be more than winning a pennant or winning a World Series or even finishing in first place. So I was having trouble figuring out the point system, and I talk about it in the book. When I was doing the research, I was doing this research for like 12 years. I was working on this thing, while working on other book projects, and it was trying to figure out the wild card. And one time I was doing something else. I talk about in the book. I was doing how many managers, who had the record for most second place finishes when you had 2 monolithic leagues from 1901 to 1968. And I did the calculations. John McGraw had the most for the National League, and Al Lopez did it for the American League. And also I had this problem with the wild card. And then what I did was I combined the two. I decided what would happen if the wild card had existed before 1994 when it was first introduced. And then I did the numerical calculations, and I came up with the 4-point value for a wild card. So basically what I did was, for that period from 1871 to 1993, before the wild card existed, I treated second place finishes as a wild card and awarded the 4 points commensurately and all of that. And then starting from 1994 and onwards, I just went to, okay, who really did win the wild cards, in Major League Baseball, and awarded the points to those appropriate managers and all that. That was the greatest challenge while doing that, and doing the Negro League calculations were the greatest challenges I faced when working on Patriarchs of the Dugout. Yeah.
So with your rating system, what manager was a surprise to get on your list, and then maybe one that you're surprised didn't get on your list?
The one who's on the list, Dave Roberts, right now is amazing. People will be quite surprised when they buy this book and they see how high I rate him. He is the greatest active manager in the major leagues today. I mean, hopefully there's going to be a postseason. Hopefully there is. He stands a chance of being the first National League manager to three-peat, not just as a pennant winner, but also to be a World Series champion. No National League manager has ever three-peated as a World Series winner, ever. The last one who came closest was John McGraw in 1923, when he lost to the Yankees in the 23 World Series and all of that. The fact that, he's the first Negro League manager to win 3 World Series and all that, breaking Cito Gaston's record and all that. I think people are going to be amazed at what he's doing. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, can he take them to the pennant? Can he take them to the World Series? Can he three-peat? Hopefully there'll be a postseason, given all the discussions about, the salary cap and all the potential lockouts and strikes and all that. Hopefully there will be a postseason. A manager who didn't make it, surprisingly, no one really comes to mind. I think Socha was one. I kept thinking Socha was going to make it, but like I said, if it hadn't been for the Corporation of Negro League Managers, yeah, he would have made it. No one really comes to mind about someone I was hoping to make it in, but didn't. No. I think the people who came in were the people I pretty much expected. Yeah, no real major disappointments on my end. No, I think the people who made it in were the ones. Yep, this is it. These are the ones here. And I'm gonna go with that. So no real disappointments. Okay, I'm gonna expect so and so to make it. No, nothing comes to mind.
And then of course, like I said, I did the whole thing with Mrs. 3. Moving it to 7, it changes a lot, and of course, so it actually confirms some of the things that I don't want it to confirm, like Joe Torre. It puts Joe Torre number 4, which is amazing to me. It's like, come on, he wasn't that great of a manager. Same thing with La Russa at 14, and it does put everybody else into the mix. It actually takes out a lot of the Negro League managers, because unfortunately in the Negro Leagues, just because you were good in 1 year doesn't make you good in consecutive years. And when you're doing 7 years in a row, it really is a lot. Did you try these? Obviously, the numbers are different because of the way, but obviously you've done a numerous amount of sports. Did you try this with hockey or with other sports?
No, with my first 2 books, I only used a single value, the career value thing. I developed the composite rating system with my 3rd book, Lords of the Gridiron 1, College Football's Greatest Coaches, where I used four standards of evaluation. Then with my pro football book, Lords of the Gridiron 2, Pro Football's Greatest Managers, I used 6 standards. But here I contracted to 3 because there were some standards which I used for the college and pro football ones I really couldn't apply to baseball. So I had to junk it. I trimmed back. I used 6 standards, but then no, I was kind of, it was like I was multiplying my entities beyond their needs. So I chopped it down to 3. And once I chopped it down to 3, everything started falling into place. It began making sense. It became more coherent. It became more logical. And that's what I went with there. But with Torre, though, here's the amazing thing about Torre. The fact that he was able to three-peat during the free agency era, because once free agency was introduced, in 1976, you weren't really getting repeat World Series winners. I mean, Cito Gaston was the first manager to do back-to-back World Series in the free agency era. And then what you have is Torre three-peating. That is still an amazing feat. I mean, Doug Roberts has a shot this year at matching that record, three-peating. Excuse me, at three-peating. And it'll be interesting to see if he pulls it off. But, I mean, what Torre did, the three-peat, and then, winning in 96 and then winning again pennants in 01 and 03. That is still an extraordinary achievement. And Dave Roberts is kind of closing in on that right now. I mean, he had those 2 prior World Series losses. And if he had won those World Series, guess what? He would rank even higher than what he is even now, if he had won those World Series. So, no, I think, what Torre did was absolutely extraordinary.
And we won't have to worry about Dave Roberts having to three-peat, because the Phillies are going to definitely take care of that situation.
Well, we'll see. The thing is, with Mattingly, though, if the Phillies make the postseason but don't win the pennant, he'll enter the heartbreak managing ranks. And that I discussed that in my book, a phenomenon that throughout my sports research I've discovered. Managers and coaches who are able to get their teams in the postseason yet are incapable of taking them to the championship finals. I invented that term in my very first book, Bench Bosses, the NHL's Coaching Elite, and I discuss it in my second book and also And in my book, Patriarchs of the Dugout, managers, they can take them in there. I mean, Mattingly's got has had 4 postseason appearances, but hasn't won a pennant. And if they don't, and the Phillies don't do it this year, he will enter the heartbreak managing ranks. But I reveal those managers who have had a minimum of 5 postseason appearances, but are incapable of winning the pennant and all of that. You talk about like Bob Melvin, Ron Gardenhire.
Buck. Was it Buck Showalter?
Yeah, Showalter. Yes, 6. The guy just can't win a pennant. You don't have to win the World Series, just win the pennant. I mean, it's basically it's like a corollary of the phrase "he can't win the big one," but at least you had a shot at the big one. Some managers, you're going to get 2 tickets to the big dance. Some managers can't even earn 1 ticket to the big dance. I mean, the sport that has the most heartbreak coaches. NBA basketball, followed by NHL hockey, then NFL football. Baseball managers right now is the one with the least. But as years go up, you're going to see more and more managers enter the heartbreak managing ranks and all of that. But the NBA has the most heartbreak coaches of all the 4 sports.
I live here with the heartbreak. I live here with the heartbreak franchise. We have yet to punch a ticket to the big dance.
I know, but but it is a phenomenon. That explains why certain coaches and managers keep getting fired, because they can't even take it, get it into the big dance and all of that. I mean, it's a phenomenon there, and I've been tracking that phenomenon. In fact, my next book, which will come out this October, Men in the Huddle, Pro Basketball's Greatest Coaches, will discuss the heartbreak coaching phenomenon in NBA basketball there. And I'll use the same rating system I'm using for Patriarchs of the Dugout for NBA basketball and all of that. I'm presently working on that. And again, the book will be released October 1st this year at Amazon. Yeah.
Nice. So then, and just thinking about heartbreak, was there anybody more of a heartbreak than Marty Schottenheimer? Like I feel like that he's got to be on the top 5 of that list of all sports.
Guess what? Marty Schottenheimer is the greatest heartbreak coach.
I knew that one.
Absolutely. Get the book and you'll see who else is up there. Again, Lords of the Gridiron 2, Pro Football's Greatest Coaches, up on Amazon. Yeah, he is numero uno. And who was the first heartbreak coach in NFL history? It was John Madden. He was the first one to do 5 playoff appearances without making a Super Bowl. Then finally, he was the first to break his curse and all of that. Oh, don't laugh. In NHL hockey, Rod Brind'Amour, who led the Panthers to the Stanley Cup Finals, before he did so, he was a heartbreak coach. Then finally, this season, he snapped it. And he was able to earn a berth in the Stanley Cup Finals. And for good measure, he won the Stanley Cup and all that. But he was a heartbreak coach for a time. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And hockey, I grew up with hockey, so I know a lot about that. As I think about that, like you're saying you make it to the Stanley Cup, that takes you off of the list,
right?
There's so many different coaches that even made it to the Stanley Cup and then never did it, and you start to think about all the different coaches that fell into that category when it was.
Yeah,
the Islanders, and then the Oilers had their dynasties in the early 80s, and it's like even all the Flyers coaches in the meantime. Hitchcock kind of falls into that category, although he made it to the Stanley Cup.
And he won the Stanley Cup too, but no, he was never a heartbreak coach. Like the greatest NHL heartbreak coach of all time is Jacques Martin. 12 Stanley Cup playoff appearances, but he never got a ticket to the big dance. But he's numero uno, for NHL coaches and all of that. Marty Schottenheimer is numero uno for NFL, and to know the answer for NBA basketball, you're going to have to buy my book, Men in the Huddle, Pro Basketball's Greatest Coaches. On October 1st, you'll know that answer. And if you have me on the show again later on to discuss this, we'll talk about that, okay?
We'd have to do that on a Wednesday so that we could have Cam on here so that he could argue every point that you ever make about every basketball coach possible. Because Cam is always right.
Yeah. That would be hilarious. It would not be not a lot would come out of it, but it would be fun to watch.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're watching today, this is the book we're talking about, and the QR code takes you right to the Amazon page where you can buy this book. So,
yeah.
What would you say in your research that was the most educational for you? I mean, obviously, like it says, you have done this for numerous sports, and like myself, I'm a fan of all the sports. So I am somewhat of a historian, but I don't claim to know it all. What would you say was the most educational throughout this process?
Educational. I think Rube Foster was the most educational because he was the greatest Negro League pitcher in the early 20th century, from the 1900s and the 1910s. I mean, he was just the greatest black pitcher of all time. What he did in 1920 was, before 1920, when the Negro National League was formed, yeah, you had teams. And there were like very crude associations, but it was a lot of loose bricks without any real genuine organizational mortar there. But what he did in 1920 was he was able to get 8 teams, and he created a league and modeled it after, the established Major League Baseball. And he actually gave Negro League Baseball some discipline, some real true organization. And he started off the Negro National League from 1920. And his team, the Chicago American Giants, was the dominant team in the first 3 seasons. They're winning those pennants those first 3 years. But not only was he a manager, he was also the president of the league. He did the negotiations. I mean, he basically ran the team simultaneously while he was running his own team there. I mean, he literally worked himself to death. I mean, when he had that accident where he suffered carbon monoxide poisoning, that literally affected his mind. It made him have a mental breakdown. And finally, he died, in an insane asylum, and it was at 1930 or 1931. But not only was he a genius manager, he was also the brains behind the whole league. He gave it structure, and what all the subsequent Negro leagues that followed, because the Negro National League broke apart. Was it? Oh, I forget. Was it 1929, 1930, or 31 or 32 thereabouts? But there were other leagues that followed instead, and they based it on his model. I mean, if there's a Mount Rushmore for Negro leaguers, he is one of the 4 faces on that Mount Rushmore, along with Josh Gibson, Oscar Charleston, and Satchel Paige, in my opinion. But he set it on a course there. He created the organization. And that's why from 1920 to 1948, those were the established Negro leagues and all that. They followed in his footsteps. He was the biggest surprise. I mean, one writer said, imagine merging Christy Mathewson, Branch Rickey, John McGraw, and Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis in one person. And that was Rube Foster with regards to organizing Negro League baseball. I mean, he shouldn't have had to wait so long to be inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was, but it was very late. I forget what year that was. That was like 90s or the 2000s. He shouldn't have had to wait. He shouldn't have had to wait that long. He should have gone instantaneously.
And there's actually a big portion of when you go to that museum, they talk about him extensively, and just how influential he was in that whole process. I mean, and they don't sugarcoat it either. Like, he did it for the money. Like, he absolutely did it for the money. But he was very influential in all of it. And like it says, it's absolutely worth it to go to that. Like, I kind of went there just like, it's baseball. I'm going to go check it out. It was over impressed. I said, it's one of those times where I walked out of there telling everybody about it. It was like, wow, you need to come here and you need to take the tour because it really was overwhelming in terms of how great of an experience it was.
Also, I discuss in my Rube Foster chapter, the man was a magnificent chess master when it came to baseball tactics. He was right up there with Earl Weaver, Casey Stengel. I know you're going to vomit at this, La Russa. In other words, running plays, because I discussed some of the tactics that he used. And you don't see stuff like that in Major League Baseball today. On a sacrifice bunt, the runner doesn't stop at second; he keeps going to third. Or if a guy's on third and a guy gets a walk, instead of stopping at first base, he tries to steal second, and the guy on third breaks from third, tries to break from home while the catcher's trying to throw out the guy trying to steal second and all that. You don't see that in baseball today. I mean, it was incredible trickery, and I wish they would do stuff like that in Major League Baseball today. But it was like he was like bringing back inside baseball in the 1920s and all that. The man was a genius, a brilliant chess master in terms of motivating personnel and also using trickery.
And it was unfortunately they just don't have the speed like that anymore in baseball. That speed is the one thing that has disappeared in this regard. Like it's like I feel like it's like small ball. Unfortunately, small ball requires speed. And if you don't have it, and they just don't teach that anymore. That's why Ricky Henderson was really the last of them. You could say Vince Coleman, and you could almost say De La Cruz right now. But even as we get further along in his career, he stopped stealing bases. The speed is no longer important, and that's where you could do some of those things. You could think about that right now, where somebody's you're just walking and you go to steal second right away. They're going to be like, what's going on? Like, people are going to go nuts. And like, we're not sure what's supposed to happen here.
But the irony is when the Boston Red Sox made their miracle run in 2004, what began the whole thing? A stolen base by Dave Roberts. So I forget Moneyball. I know that famous scene, no bunts, no, don't steal it, but let them steal the base. Wrong. Sometimes you do need to sacrifice bunt. Sometimes you do need to steal a base. Sometimes you need to, play some inside ball and all of that. So I think, that's my disagreement with analytics. You still need to do those little basic things. You still need to learn how to sacrifice once in a while. You still need to be able to steal a base if it's called upon and all that. And you got to take advantage of those things. You can't always rely on a home run. I mean, not every time you can get a home run and all that. So you have to figure out other ways of doing it.
Well, and they've even made it more runner friendly to steal bags, right? And you still don't see it at the frequency that you used to. So, I mean, to your point, it's speed is an issue, and they just don't play small ball at all. Yeah, I mean, it's run or nothing. And you see that in batting averages. Like, they're swinging for the fence, and otherwise it's a strikeout.
Yeah. And you're just not getting the pitcher who has a 198 ERA or all that, who's getting like 13 or 16 shutouts like Gibson or Koufax used to get in the 1960s. If you lead the league in complete games, if you got 3 complete games, like wow.
Exactly.
I mean, 3 complete games. Holy cow, man. Jeez, But it's like, it reminds me of baseball from 95 to 02 when they juiced up the ball. And I believe that ball was juiced. I mean, it was obscene. I mean, also, plus you had the PEDs combining with the juiced up ball. I mean, you were getting football scores, and it was killing the game. I mean, guys winning an ERA title with a 3.45 ERA. I mean, it was sad in a way. I remember the late Pete Rose even complaining about that. He said, it's insane. He said, talked about you should legalize the spitter. You should pull the fences back, expand the strike zone. This was in the mid 90s. I remember that, God rest his soul, and all that. Yeah.
It used to be from like shoulders to knees. That used to be the strike zone. Yeah. Now it's just, you got barely a small square, and it's. Hey, listen. There used to be a commercial that was run on our network that had a guy say, the people that run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
And in some ways they still are. I mean, and if there's going to be a strike either later this year or next year, whatever progress has been made now, it is going straight down the tubes. And that's a tragedy. That is going to be an enormous tragedy, because right now baseball can ill afford a prolonged lockout or a strike like now, when they're struggling to try to regain its fan base in the wake of everything else. I mean, this is the wrong time for a labor stoppage and all that. The absolute wrong time.
I mean, it took steroids to recover the last time. And when you have a sport that is, shedding viewership anyway, to your point, like it could be detrimental to the sport if they actually have a real lockout.
But the thing is, with the steroids, even that's a black mark too. For all those taters, it's not real. It was all a fake, you know.
Yeah,
so,
I
you watched.
disagree with that. I
You did
disagree with
watch.
that. You still had to, like, listen, everybody was doing them at the time, both pitchers and the hitters still had to hit the ball. Listen, the pitchers that were doing it and doing them well were still great pitchers. Roger Clemens was amazing, and you could argue that, hey, the reason why he's kept out of the Hall of Fame, and the same thing with Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire. Listen, I still have the newspaper from Mark McGwire and Sosa doing that. Those two guys saved baseball at a time when it wasn't ready to be saved. You know, like that's, and I feel that way, and I feel really strongly. I feel the Hall of Fame is the Hall of somewhat good for baseball. I don't think that I have so many issues and problems because ultimately you can't turn the blind eye, and then you can't be. You may have a vote, you may not. I don't know that.
No, I don't have a vote. I don't have a vote. But I'll be honest, it just thing is, Bonds, he didn't have to do it. If he had stayed clean, he probably wouldn't have broken Aaron's record. But on sheer weight of his ability alone, he would have made it if he had just stayed clean. But he didn't do it, and that's just I got a problem with that. I mean, I will never acknowledge him, quote unquote, breaking Aaron's record in my personal record book as an old baseball fan and all that, that a long suffering baseball fan.
No, but I mean, at the end of the day, it did bring viewers back to the sport, and so
it did. I know.
Whether you put an asterisk next to any records or anything like that, what it was must-see TV. Like, you had to come back to the sport and watch them, denting cars in a parking lot because, I mean, the ball was the size of a beach ball to them.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, you're big from Philadelphia. The '93 Phillies, Lenny Dykstra said it out loud on television. Why are you guys so good? He's like, good vitamins. He said it out loud on an interview. Like that they were doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And the thing is that like you could go back and I know that Billy Crystal did the Roger Maris with the asterisk and stuff like that and all those different things. What he did leave out was the start of them starting to play with those types of vitamins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, Jim Bound talked about Papa Greeny and all that. Hey, yeah.
And so there was a lot of those different things that, hey, listen, it's if you're not cheating, you ain't trying, and that's the way it's always been. And ultimately, I feel like that you can't just dismiss a whole group of people that people like me, like I said, I have the newspaper still when he hit 3 home runs. Mark McGwire hit 3 home runs at Vet Stadium. I said I was going to catch one of the balls. He hit it so hard, it hit off of the concrete between the 300 and 400 level and landed on my seat. And the Inquirer took a picture of me going, because I knew that I said he was going to hit me the ball and he didn't. And it's like it was Godzilla 3 was how he the headline of that newspaper.
Talking about cheating, I talk about the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal, but I noticed in the course of my research, a lot of the great managers featured in our book had teams of sign stealers. Connie Mack's early teams in the 1900s and 1910s had a lot of guys who could steal signs, like Eddie Collins and Chief Bender. They were great at stealing signs. Pat Moran, who led the Phillies to their very first pennant win in 1915, he taught his players how to steal signs from opposing teams. Leo DeRocher in 1951 with Bobby Thompson, he had that telescope in the center field clubhouse of the Polo Grounds stealing signs and all that. Joe McCarthy had coaches who were great at stealing signs. So there's always been that element of espionage. In other words, reading other teams' signs, decoding them, and then figuring out how to defeat them and all that. So there's an element in that. But what Hinch with the Astros did, what's the rule of espionage? Thou shalt not get caught. They got caught. That's rule number one in espionage. Thou shalt not get caught. And they got, like Watergate, they got caught. Hey.
Yeah. It also had to do with how they were getting the signs in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if it's your guy standing on second base relaying it,
Yeah.
that's within the framework of the game. You'd be
yeah,
hey, that's some
natural. That's
gamesmanship.
cool. Yeah.
Right. But if it's you banging a trash can on the side, that's a little different. Right.
So yeah, the whole world kind of knew, but it was
don't
just
take my shirt off. Don't take my shirt off because I got killed.
But there you go. Yeah, there you go, man. Yeah.
And of course,
but I mean, you think about that, even in the 1950s, where the guy wearing glasses, they said that he would have little mirrors that were focused so that he'd be all the way up in the box, so that he could see the side of the catcher, using mirrors in his glasses to be able to check back.
Yeah. Just if you can get away with it, man. If you ain't you, then you ain't winning. Just there it goes, man. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And of course, Joe is a Astros fan, so
yeah. The thing is, though, the Tigers, I mean, he came so close, but now the Tigers, they lost their top pitcher, man. Now they've gone straight down the tube. So yeah, the thing is, Hinch's rating going to go down because they've got a bad losing record right now. So he's actually going to drop some points off my rating system because he's featured in the book, but his stock will go down when I update my charts, at the end of this year and all that. Yeah.
And of course, we are
going to save him.
Close to the end of the show here. So, one more time, let everybody know how they can find your book. And of course, we'll put the QR code up here on the screen.
Yes. Patriarchs of the Dugout, Baseball's Greatest Managers is available at Amazon. It is not available in stores. You must buy it online at Amazon. You have a choice. You can either buy it in paperback form or in Kindle. It is on sale at 25% off and will remain on sale for the duration of the Major League Baseball season. You just get it off Amazon, ladies and gentlemen. And if you just type in my name, you can look for my other books too. My first two books, Bench Bosses, the NHL's Coaching Elite, and The Art of the Dealers, the NHL's Greatest General Managers, is up there. Also, my college football book, Lords of the Gridiron, College Football's Greatest Coaches, is up there. And also my pro football book, Lords of the Gridiron 2, Pro Football's Greatest Coaches, is up there too. Thank you very much.
All right. We appreciate you being on, man. This has been fun.
Thank you. God bless you both. Hey, stay cool, stay safe, and thank you from the bottom of my heart, Bo, Pags. Thanks a million, man. Love you all.
Absolutely. And then, of course, if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our stuff to you. And, of course, if you are listening on 97.3 ICU Radio, we do have some smooth jazz headed your way. Otherwise, we will catch y'all next week. Enjoy your weekend. Matt, again, thanks for being on, man.
Thank you. God bless you, man. Thank you. All right.